Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for making time. I'm honored to be here with some of our lightning round presenters for the conference that, believe it or not, is starting this Friday, April 22, the first of its kind. And, we were just reflecting before jumping into the show here, how what an incredible diversity. So it's just four of us, okay? And we have Kalyan from India, Michelle from the UK, and Heather and me in the States. And I think that is like very reflective of the diversity of lived experiences, of knowledge, what we all bring. Some of us, and like diversity in the widest sense, like some of us have a product that we believe is transformational for nonprofits. Others have a service or a training to that discover new tools. Yet others are in the trenches, and we're all and we're and Leslie's here, and Emily. We're going to welcome a few more people. Hello, I was just doing my introductory spiel. Welcome, Emily. Welcome, Leslie. Thanks so much for joining us today. I was reflecting on the wide diversity of just the few people that we have on this call, but that it's kind of representative of the whole donor participation project, which is one of the really cool things. So just right here, we're doing a meet and greet with the lightning round speakers for the conference that's starting this Friday. And we have several continents represented. We have services, training, active fundraisers with nonprofits struggling through all those, my boss won't approve anything type of issues. So it's going to be great. We look forward to having. I'm very grateful to everybody who's here on the call today and those who will be joining. And here we have Marcus Howard. So yet another category. He is in the gaming space, and we have so much to learn from you, Marcus. So the plan for today is anybody who is listening in, please do chat in on what continent you are, because we have several represented here already. But also, what org you're with and whether you're joining the conference. And then we'll do a round robin of introductions, and we'll chat with you. And it's going to be great. So shall I just get started? Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Kalyan from Alma Base, your turn. What are you going to talk to us? What are you going to share on this Friday that is going to be amazing?
Yeah, thank you for putting me on the spot first. I'm here just to add to the diversity of the group, I guess.
Never.
So yeah, what I'm going to be talking about is, interestingly, I'm going to start primarily with a LinkedIn post that you had, Louis. You spoke about the traditional annual fund approach versus the communities of purpose approach. And I think that's actually a really, really powerful idea. Essentially what you talk about in that article. I don't know if I can share my screen in here. Can I?
You should be able to.
Okay, let me just share my screen so I know I can have a visual reference for what I'm talking about. Can you see this?
I think, wait, just a sec. I'm going to look for your screen.
Oh, okay. Let me do it again.
Did that work? No. We're going to figure this one out. Oh, I took Kalyan off, and I'm going to turn on his. There we go. Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. So
I have the Brady Bunch here, right next to it.
Perfect. So yeah, you spoke about this, Louis, in this LinkedIn post, essentially sort of talking about the communities of purpose approach, where you essentially make the argument very strongly about, how do we rethink the annual fund approach in terms of creating communities of purpose. They could be class groups, there could be affinity groups, there could be groups based on, region, anything really, right? Like where, as long as a group of alumni have a similar interest or affinity, right? So you create, you identify leaders in the group, you roll out like a digital town square, you develop a content sharing plan like donor recognition, things like that. And so essentially with Alma Base, we've actually been working with a lot of institutions now. Obviously, I'm not able to share real examples because the content is private, but this is just a demo of what we've built. Essentially, really strongly supports this idea, right? So institutions are able to sort of create a two-way communication street, which is my key point here, right? To be able to allow for example, create a group of, let's say, the class of 1991, allow people to share content, engage with them before you make the ask. And all of this, the key for this becomes that there's an inbuilt email distribution system built in, right? So what happens is as soon as you post something, as soon as other people start commenting on it, an email just goes out automatically to all the relevant people with relevant content, which makes the communication two-way as opposed to like a one-way street. And that was going to be my key point with respect to the lightning round. So let me stop.
That's so great. Kalyan, are we supposed to be seeing, we were just seeing ourselves on the screen. We have a little bit of time. If you want to show another tab. And I know this platform is tricky. We've had problems. Emily and I had a big snafu once. So there have been issues. And Marcus
it was very meta just now.
This is good practice then. So okay, let me make sure. Okay, how about now? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can, yes.
Perfect. You should have interrupted me earlier. I was going on and on, assuming the screen was visible.
We're very polite.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Essentially, the idea being, how do you create a two-way communication street where you can create a community of purpose? In this case, for example, the class of 1991, for example, where both the alumni as well as the staff members are able to share updates. Maybe this is even like you can use this for recognition of donors, updating about how these funds are being used, etc., etc. And it's sort of like a Facebook group, but the advantage being that all of the content gets distributed automatically over email. So all of the members of the group get an email whenever there's new content here, which are able to obviously leverage to be able to create communities of purpose, like I said in the article that Louis had shared. So I'll just take a pause there.
Thank you, Kalyan. Very tempting, I have to say. This all just sounds very tempting. So we'll ask everybody, including folks here on the call and anybody who's in the chat, if you have questions for Kalyan, just put them in and we'll put them on the screen and answer them. But in the meantime, Michelle, your posts are amazing here on LinkedIn, but I know you have a whole system to fundraise on LinkedIn. And that's kind of a topic du jour now. So we'd love to hear about that.
I do indeed. Thank you, Louis. So my name is Michelle Benson, and I've worked in fundraising for years. And about 10 years ago, I stopped being a fundraiser and became a funder. So I started working on the other side of the fence. And as a funder, I worked as a trust fund. I worked with other high value donors. So we started to do joint funding with corporates and major donors and their advisors. And one of the things that we found was that we were getting so many applications coming in on a daily basis that as a joint group, it was easier to close the fund and proactively find who we wanted to fund, which was great. And that worked perfectly for us. So I was working across a whole number of funders as we were all collectively, proactively looking to who to invest in. And then when I started to work again on the fundraising side of the fence, I noticed that on the fundraising side of the fence, the job was to push on closed doors, find an excuse to open that door, get that bloody door open. On the funding side of the fence, it's button down the hatches, lock the thing, and God don't, it's too many people, don't let them in. So there's this kind of huge dilemma. So I basically started to work with the people that we were funding, and subsequently now with funders and also charities, to say, if funders don't want you knocking on that door and they are proactively looking, stop chasing and start being found. Put yourself in the pathway of where they are looking. That way you turn up into their world as the solution. You turn up as a welcome guest and not this pest knocking on the door. And so basically I've come up with a whole system. LinkedIn is brilliant for this system, is to say, how do you use LinkedIn in order to be found, intentionally use LinkedIn in order to be found by the funders who are proactively looking This is you sticking yourself in their pathway. And it's so much more fun than being, you know, in this job where you're knocking on a closed door, which sucks. And I also think that becomes, and also if you're knocking on a closed door, it's not effective. And if anything you're doing is less effective, it becomes more frustrating. So as a fundraiser, it's more frustrating to work that way. As a funder, it's frustrating to be bombarded that way. But as a funder proactively looking, it's a brilliant job. You know, your job is to shop. That's a great job. And then when you go out shopping, finding those charities and finding those gems is brilliant as well. And the other thing that I think is really, really brilliant about it is it gives those tiny little charities equal opportunities being found as it does the big ones. Because charities often say, yeah, but we're really tiny, we won't get found because we're little, you know. If I was a funder and I was only interested in big brand names, I don't need to hire staff to proactively look. You know what I mean? If you say, let's name an environmental charity, you can name 3. We're not going to employ someone to find. So you're purposely employing people to find those little guys. And, you know, it's not only is it more effective, it's more rewarding. And once you start getting the results and you put a system in place and one that you can repeat and that one you can feel confident about, then, you know, hopefully it puts that kind of the fun bit back into the fundraising as well. So that's what I'll be talking about on Friday.
How cool. And what I love about it is that it's kind of sneaky, which is some of my favorite fundraising tactics.
Yeah.
I like that. You know? It's, oh, why? What a surprise. You're here. I wasn't expecting your call. Marcus did something like that to me a couple of weeks ago. But
I did. It worked.
That's the point, right? That's the whole thing. So anyhow, we've lost Leslie. I'll try to chat her. But welcome everybody who said hi. Quincy, Stephen, Cameron. We were reflecting on what a kind of cool, diverse group this is that has come together to increase donor participation in nonprofits. And this is a problem that you need to solve from a ton of perspectives, right? And participation means you need more and different types of people participating than your usual donors. So it has a wide array of consequences that I think are good. So like if you want to do this, it's the same thing that Michelle was saying. If you want to do this in a fun, positive, smart way, the consequences are pretty great. Like it has positive externalities. You start having fun. You attract more diverse groups. And Heather has been amazing at bringing all these groups together. And that's a little bit of what she's going to talk about on Friday. So Heather, can you share?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to say, just from what Colleen and Michelle have said so far, I'm just so excited for Friday and for this entire conference. I like the amount of learning and collaboration and support that I have found through the Donor Participation Project. Like it blows me away. And I just think it's the most extraordinary group of professionals I've ever been a part of. And I'm really excited for the sessions. So I'm on the social services sector, and I've been working in the social services space for a long time. And what I'm going to talk about on Friday is that, there is a tendency in social services to automatically place our different constituent groups into their own categories and assume that we can only talk to each group about certain things. And so when we think about our donors and our funders, that's the group we go to when we need support and we need funds and we need help. And when we think about our participants or our clients or recipients of our services, we tend to come from this very cautious place of, if they're in a position in life where they need to utilize our services, we can't be asking them for anything. I mean, we're here to serve them. And, it would be really egregious and awful to ask them for anything back. It's not what we are. It's not what we do. But we have been really experimenting at my organization, Norwest Cap in New Jersey, at how we can break down those silos a little bit and find gentle ways to invite our various groups that we've identified as belonging in that group to be a part of our overall community and to engage with us in ways that we might not typically expect them to. And so one of the most recent examples, and this is what I'm going to focus on in my lightning round presentation on Friday, is how we are mandated through some of our funding sources to conduct a community needs assessment every other year to just see what are the gaps in services in our communities and where can we sort of redirect some of our strategies to address those gaps. And so in the past, that has always been done from that very needs-based place. And it's been focused on our current participants, on targeted groups within the communities where we know people of lesser means or lower income might be engaging. We took a totally different approach this year, and we created a needs assessment survey that was actually we called it Communities That Thrive. And the kinds of questions we asked were more about what are your goals and dreams for yourself and for your community, and what are the obstacles that you see or experience to those goals for both yourself and at the community level. And we sent out the same survey, different links so that we could track the data, but the same survey to multiple groups in multiple ways. And the type of engagement that we got and the type of responses we got really blew us away. And we had, specific questions at the end. Would you like to be a part of Norwest Cap's community by donating, by subscribing to our e-newsletter, by sharing your story? Are you interested in learning about services that we offer? And again, the responses we got from the different constituent groups were well outside of our assumptions. People who have been recipients of our services stepping up to say, yes, I do want to donate, and actually following through on that. People who were donors saying, yeah, actually, I could probably utilize some of your services, when our natural assumption would be that our donors don't need our services. So it's really changed our way of looking at how we define our community and our constituents within those communities. And it's influencing everything from our strategies of our programs and services going forward to our a website redesign that we're in the middle of right now, and what that website should convey, and our social media strategies. I mean, it's a game changer for us.
Wow, Heather, that's amazing. And I think it also illustrates what happens when you get really smart people with other very different smart people. Yes, there's lots of conversation, but just the level of ideas is just beyond anything I've seen recently. So kudos. We look forward to hearing more about it on Friday, April 22. Everybody that's here will be delivering a lightning round presentation. And there's going to be a lot more. So it's going to be a pretty intense 2 hours. Be ready for that. Emily Taylor. And before we're gone, everybody, please, let's do another round with your title and your organization, because everybody's has been very shy about sharing that. So Emily Taylor, teeny big. I'll do that for you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I got a new microphone that I haven't been able to test out yet. So you're my testing ground. Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of this group too. I spent a lot of my career in the for-profit world, working on consumer products and doing research to try to figure out what makes people buy things and pull them off the shelf. And I've always just wanted to be in the nonprofit space. So I've spent the last 5 years kind of translating some of the work that I do and, understanding the nuances in the nonprofit space, focusing on the mission and doing good. But my past experiences allowed me to see that there's some things that, especially when we're dealing with a general public audience, that they're used to being sold to. They're used to, I loved hearing Michelle's example. People are buying things. And while we have to put the layer of social good and nonprofit onto that, it's still something that people are experiencing in their everyday lives. And even Heather, what you were talking about, that looking at, rather than demographics of people, what are people's passions and motivations? I mean, for-profit companies have been doing that for a long time. And so one, I'm just super excited that Donor Participation Project is like bringing all these ideas together, because there shouldn't always be all these lines between for-profit and nonprofit. We should be able to learn from each other and pull what really matters out so that we can do good in this world. So the thing that I'm going to talk about, my focus is on strategic listening for nonprofits. And one of the ways that I help organizations listen is through prototyping ideas and getting them out in front of people. So oftentimes we can think different campaigns might work, and if we redesigned our website, things would change. And you can actually, rather than invest and build these whole things, you can prototype them. I've helped organizations prototype websites that we then share with people and get feedback before an event is even taken its first step to be created. And so what I'm going to share on Friday is not something as big as a website, but just sharing some different campaign messaging. So I'll be sharing some work I did with an organization, some different messaging, and how they got feedback on that messaging to create something that helps help the people listening to it, help their potential donors, motivate them to donate. So I'll be talking about that, and just hope it's a simple enough example that you'll see you can do it tomorrow, or I guess Monday after Friday.
Thanks so much, Emily. This is great. So Leslie, you lost your place in line. I hope it's okay.
That's fine.
It was the evil connectivity issues.
Yeah, it was my VPN.
But isn't it amazing that we kind of all met on LinkedIn, and that we've been able to come together in this way? Huge kudos to LinkedIn for this. But Marcus, you dropped your middle name, which is esports. Tell us about everything, please.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. Great to meet you all, and look forward to speaking with you all and learning from you all this Friday. My fundamental message is that video games should become a foundation of your philanthropic efforts, because nearly half of the world's population and 66% of Americans are gamers. The average gamer in the US is actually 31 years old. 45% of gamers are women. So given basically any nonprofit group, that community that supports that nonprofit most likely has gamers in it. They're actively gaming on a monthly, weekly, in some cases daily basis. So this Friday, you can expect to learn more about the deep dive of the demographics of gamers, some examples of platforms that have been used to raise donations. For example, in 2020, Twitch raised $83 million worth of donations. And then some specific steps to start that process. And that's a lot to cram in 2 to 3 minutes. So I've got a little bit of organizing to do between here and there. But glad to answer any questions. I give a shout out to Jay Goulart, who is apparently also here in Tampa Bay. Thank you for tuning in.
That's amazing, the connection. So we're really, what I say a lot of times is that the issues in fundraising are not lack of opportunity, but kind of failures of imagination. And I think Marcus will open up yet another new virtual worlds for us, right? So that's going to be so cool. Leslie, thanks so much. You've been with the DPP for a while, and you jumped on this, and we're so tremendously grateful. Share what you're going to talk about on Friday, please.
Thanks, Luis. So I'm at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and so on the higher ed side of the nonprofit world. And one of the things I was going to talk about is, so during the pandemic, we have had just like an explosion in new people caring about the work that we do, given that it's public health. And we were looking for ways to kind of like test the interest that these people have in supporting our work. Like, they care deeply about the work that we're doing. We found that they were really grateful for that work. And we're looking for ways to engage people where they were listening to us and finding trustworthy messengers to get that message to them. And so I partnered with one of our e-newsletters that is really intended to be public facing. Like, they've built years of trust and delivering daily message about what the news of the public health world is around them. And we partnered on a crowdfunding campaign to raise money for a local reporting initiative that just absolutely blew all of our expectations out of the water. So I'm going to talk about how important trust was to making that happen, both the trust that those subscribers to this newsletter have placed in the work that we're doing. They find it a trustworthy news source. And then I really partnered with the editors and writers of that publication to craft messaging that was in line with the way that they talk, the values that they share as a publication with their readers, and then also a cause that would really make sense for them. And we engaged not only people who had no other relationship to Johns Hopkins outside of their subscribing to this newsletter as donors, plus also like 100 new alumni donors who hadn't been responding to anything else. And so we've really been looking for creative ways to draw the line between the work that people care about and the mission that they believe in, and the work that we're already doing through trustworthy messengers and messages that make that clear.
My goodness, Leslie, that's so great. And I look forward to learning that perspective from you of the really big institution and how you can innovate and discover things, be entrepreneurial inside of it. I know Bloomberg is really top notch in the industry. So really excited. Okay, so we're going to prove or disprove Marcus's point that there are gamers everywhere. On this screen, or I know at least there's one gamer in the chat, so that doesn't count. But what's your favorite game?
I can go first. So Knockout City is my game of choice. I just posted it in the chat, but it's like a hidden gem in the ecosystem. It's like, imagine if you remember NBA Jam for back in the day on the Super Nintendo. Imagine that plus dodgeball. So it's easy for anyone to pick up. You can have a 70-year-old play with a 7-year-old. There's no violence in it. You can play it on mobile, gaming console, PC. It's just a blast. That's my favorite game.
Fantastic discovery. I was going to share something that was not family friendly. So
it's fine. No, and there's space for all of them, right?
Yeah, I'll say my gaming, I don't even know if it counts as gaming, but Wordle is the one that I'm playing now, but I'm definitely a forever Tetris fan. And I like kind of the simple zone out games.
I'm going to go. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, I don't actually game, but I've got 3 children who game a lot. So, and I know there's a game, and I don't know the name of it, that all 3 of them are playing at the moment, where they're a detective. I don't know if you know it, and that they've lost their memory and they've got to figure out some of the mystery. That seems to be hitting the UK teenagers scene in a big way. So quite obsessively.
Sounds cool. Like the story of my life, Michelle. The memory loss, all of that.
I'm gonna go old school, and I will be curious if anybody on the group or in the chat is familiar with this, because I haven't played this in a long time. But when I was a teenager, the King's Quest games and the Sierra games, I would literally, when a new King's Quest came out, my best friend would come over and we would stay up all night playing those games. We were so obsessed with solving those, and getting every single point. My husband recently found them on some sort of throwback platform. And so we have a week over the summer where our son is going to be away with my parents. And we decided every night, we're just going to play King's Quest.
My goodness. That's bringing back so many memories. Okay, we won't. Okay, we have more questions, more ideas. Who's going to share another one? Sorry.
It's been a long time since it's been a few years since I've stopped playing. The last time was in college, but I could literally count all the, insane hours I spent playing FIFA, the soccer game, and then Counter-Strike, which was like insane for when you were just talking about like staying up all night playing games. I can literally tell you that I've spent more time playing games than studying engineering in college.
When Halo 2 came out, this was like 2004. I actually skipped an entire week of college to beat the game in a week. I was living in the freshman dorm, went down to the lobby, plugged up my Xbox, and my roommates and my brother and his roommate, and all 4 of us just skipped school for a week. Wasn't the best idea for my grades that semester, but it was an amazing experience.
Life experience.
And what does this say for nonprofits?
That's so cool. I met my best friend because he had older brothers, and he'd tell me how to pass the games. All those, the text games that you could play. And they, oh my goodness, so many memories. Marcus, I'm sorry, we're going to disinvite you from this conference because you're just going to take over. It's going to be too much fun. And we're here to talk about boring old fundraising. And so wonderful. And Stephen is posting some really thoughtful remarks. Thank you for sharing. And maybe you can do some gaming fundraising. Cameron Hall, Angry Birds match. Addictive. There should be some law against games that are too addictive. Let me see, a question for Emily. I wonder, and we have to go back a little bit to what you shared, but the prototyping, the messaging, I wonder how this ties to belonging and identity with an organization. Maybe you can pull that thread.
Yeah, I was trying to, and Steve, if you have any other details around that, feel free, but I'll riff on it for a bit. I think the idea of prototyping, if that's what you're connecting it to, you definitely want if you're going to be showing a prototype to somebody, you want to know who they are, right? And so I think that kind of goes back to Heather's point about how are we categorizing people. So if maybe there's people new and fresh to your organization, they might be drawn in or take action with a different communication than someone who's been really involved and is an expert at what you do. So that's definitely something of like, if that is the I belonging and identity that you're talking about. I also, as Louis knows, I've been doing a lot around engagement mapping and how do you bring people in stages to an organization. So I think that's just very important to be thinking about how are people feeling that they belong and identify at each of those stages. So it might be, something a little more light and catchy in the beginning, and it gets deeper and deeper as you go. But I don't know if that answered your question, but that's definitely something to always be thinking about of like who you're talking to when you are listening or doing some prototyping and testing.
I think it wraps everything up though as well, doesn't it? If you're going out there and as Heather said, you're not making assumptions. So you've listened first, you've put say content or products or whatever out into the market, you pull people in, and then it's that building up, as we said before, the trust, it's that trust.
What Leslie was saying, right?
It all comes together. And then obviously building that, then it comes back to the original point of building the community and not just having one. You were saying that you've got your platform, but you also got your emails. So there's lots of multiple touch points. And then if you can put some gaming fun in that mix, you're off to the races.
That's so cool. And I think, Michelle, you bring up a really good point, which was in my post for this session today, where it's almost like the execution is the strategy. So sometimes strategy means making a lot of assumptions, like we're going to do this for this segment and that for this other segment. But increasingly, we have so many means to just put messages out there and see what resonates, who that attracts, and then do something with them based on that, right?
And I think that's the other thing about assumptions and doing that, what you guys have all described, is this acceptance that some things will fail, and it's okay, and it's not a waste of resource if we put some content out there and it doesn't get engagement. Actually, that clarity gives you answers, right? It's you want to know what's engaging and what isn't. And so by putting content out and saying, right, people love this, they don't like that, it hones your messages. And so this kind of fear of everything we do, we can't fail because that's wasting resources, has got to go out the window. Because if you're not allowed to fail, you'll never succeed. And then it's sticking to what we only do because we do it because it's a safe bet, which is how you stand still.
Amen,
Michelle. I always like using, if I ever see someone using the word assumption or see someone making an assumption, I like to turn it into a hypothesis, because I think that word allows you to be like, I think this is true. Let me go out and explore and answer if it's really true or not.
Yeah.
And it allows for that failure.
another thing you got to remember is a vast majority of donors are not ready to give yet. So only like 1 to 3% are ready now. 7% will be ready soon. 30% will donate to you, but they're not ready yet. So actually, a lot of your marketing and your messaging isn't about putting words out there to grab people in. It's putting out words out there to grab 3% in, but to stay top of mind with 30%, which is a much bigger number, so that when they are ready, they know where you are and they can come to you. And it's that, again, that's measuring everything on this immediate success and not looking at the bigger picture of the not ready yet crowd, which is really where you're going to make significant income from, not that ready now crowd. And so that re-education of with our marketing and our fundraising is pulling in donors, but also staying top of mind for our future donors that are not ready yet. And if you're okay with that balance, and you start measuring that over the long term, which again, then that gets into that dirty word long term and not short term, cheaper now. Like cheaper now. So if you can get away from that, again, you can start really investing, into sustaining your fundraising.
Wise
Can I ask a question?
words.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. It's open for everybody on this group. I'm really curious about like a lot of what all of us are talking about here is basically saying engage before you ask, put content out there, truly try to understand, listen, truly care about what your community cares about, right? Like what do your donors care about? What do they need? How do we serve their needs? Engage before we fundraise, which is great. And I think obviously all of us are sort of singing the same tune, but in reality, a lot of nonprofits don't do this. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like, what is the challenge? Why don't nonprofits do this on a regular basis?
I've got a really clear answer from where I sit, which is the systems that we have. So we happen to have a really old database that Lewis has seen himself before when he was at Hopkins. And so we have to be really creative about ways that we can implement some of these strategies. So like my colleagues, this newsletter subscriber list has absolutely no connection to our donor database whatsoever. And
oh my goodness, Leslie.
Yeah.
It must be evil.
But there's so much opportunity there too. And
Exactly.
and to Michelle's point too, I heard this advice from a colleague. I think her name is Alicia Wilson. She works in economic development at Hopkins, a really challenging and important job. And she has the mantra of like, nobody's going to say no to a big change I want to make if I call it a pilot. And I think like getting buy-in for trying something really new, not scaring people into thinking that it's going to change forever, but like, let's just try it. Like nobody's going to say no to a pilot. And maybe that does happen where you are. And I'm sorry if it does, but so for us, back to your question, it's systems. That's our biggest barrier.
Yeah, I have to piggyback on that. Systems are a huge impediment. And I honestly, like through this group and so much talk about, tech that's available in the nonprofit sector now has really pushed me and my team to explore some new options. And we are exploring some new options because, similar to what you just said, Leslie, I talk about sending this same survey to our donors, our participants, our volunteers. Those all live in separate databases right now. And there is no communication between, all right, my 6-year-old is here on spring break. There is no communication between those, databases whatsoever right now. So we're working to change that. I would add to that, and I know this, again, to be true, certainly in the social services sector, which is where I've worked for most of my career, is, Michelle, you talked about the short-term versus the long-term gains, right? And possibilities. And unfortunately, as much as many of us would like to set our sights on long-term and test and put out our hypotheses and be willing to accept that some things might fail, the pressure is always on to deliver the short-term. There are aggressive, often extremely aggressive fundraising goals that need to be met for this fiscal year to, make sure we break even, make sure we can deliver on certain services, make sure we don't, because a lot of social services organizations are under that cloud of, if we don't make our numbers this year, we might have to scale back on a program, close a program. And so that that's always sitting on us of, if I don't make my goals, people aren't going to get helped. And so the willingness to direct the time and energy and resources to trying something that may or may not work just doesn't sit right, or might not be supported by leadership or by board, or simply we may never even bring it to the table with them because we just feel like we've got to deliver on what we know will work, even if it's not the most effective, and even if it's keeping us behind in where we'd like to be in evolving our strategies.
Yeah, and I
Thank
would
you,
say
Colleen.
also that there's the board thing as well, where lots of board members come on and have like a 3-year term. And so it starts at the top, where someone says, well, I'm going to be chair for the next 3 years. I wanted this to be very successful. So the short term it's cascades down. And so it's not only your immediate targets are pressurized, it just gets reinforced. And that then it just, it becomes, and it's hugely stressful.
Very, very, very stressful.
Some really good comments in the chat as well, but everybody here is also inspiring me to think that we need to train board members, find a way to invite them to a conference like the Donor Participation Conference this Friday, 4/22, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Was that very obvious? Really, so Cameron, wonderful steering committee, wonderful professional and a steering committee member for the conference. He says, it's cultural. We tend to be risk averse. I like Leslie's idea of the pilot. I did it at Hopkins too. So, oh my goodness, that's bringing back some memories. Glad to see that you've had so much success. A really interesting comment. I'm going to try to put the whole thing on the screen. Oh, yeah, here we go. So in Latin America, Enrique says it's not only the systems, but kind of that short-term survival mentality. Like, yeah, okay, that's very pretty, but we need to make it to next quarter. So then when they think about fundraising is, oh, you're the ones that can go out and ask for money? Well, do that. And very low conversion rates. Well, that's to be expected. I think that happens everywhere, no? I mean... Certainly. Really good thoughts here. Another one, short-term goals agreement, board members and top leadership training is necessary. Yes, I think that's a nut that we need to crack collectively. And I know, pulling from other fields, Marcus writes a lot about the issues in gaming companies and I guess their leadership or their investors, right? And all those pressures. So something I like about reading on LinkedIn is that we're not alone. Lots of these issues happen. Lots of industries have lots of turnover, lots of, Marcus, I don't know if you want to reflect on that from your perspective.
No, I agree with you 100%. It's one of the major issues in esports right now, to be quite candid, is that we have probably an over-index on investor funding. And so investors are optimizing for return on investment, which may, and in many cases does, cannibalize the culture, the community, the experience. And so I can understand why, if you have someone at your board who is directing your strategy and your goals, that could be challenging for you to shift the alignment or find alignment in a way where you can achieve your short-term and long-term goals while also achieving the board members' goals.
I think that's such an important point about how like the very top goals of the organization have a really big influence on our annual giving efforts. And like, I feel like I spent what felt at the time like an inordinate amount of time trying to get a definition of whether our focus was more about donors or dollars when I arrived. And now that I have that clarity, it's transformational in the way that I can prioritize our work, and even that like alumni donors are our primary goal, but then we have a secondary goal of non-alumni donors and growing that pipeline and like having consistently messaging internally and getting your leadership on board with that about like why your work matters to the overall success of your mission has been really powerful in building support among our board, among our leadership, among our faculty, all those areas.
Michelle, going back to the statistic you cited about, only 3% of the donors that you're reaching, through a communication, whatever it may be, are ready to give now. I mean, what a powerful very, very specific illustration of why the work that we do is so much more than just that immediate ROI, that immediate response to one campaign. And when you do have a leadership team and a board that is understands that, or is at least willing to give some room and space to allow for that, it's a game changer. But I think, unfortunately, the reality is that many just don't have that understanding or that that knowledge or experience to give their development teams the space to do that kind of work, and to understand that those gains might show up months or years later. I think I love the idea of having some sort of board training or focus to board and leadership, real talk from real development professionals, because we, like, as the chief development officer of my organization, I am the voice of that to my board and to my CEO. Thankfully, they are incredibly supportive and they understand, and they are allowing me to, some room to play around with things. But I've also had the experience where that's not the case. And I mean, how many times have we all been, as fundraisers, probably been, compared to salespeople? And it's just, if you have a thing that you're selling and you have your quarterly sales goal, and it's just a matter of, getting that thing out to the right markets. I mean, this just doesn't translate to the way development work happens.
I'm okay with that comparison. Oh, sorry, really quick. I'm okay with that comparison as long as it's like investment banking,
There you go.
and it's that long-term mega merger type deal that's going to take decades to, build trust for, etc. Everything else, you're right, Heather, in the garbage. Sorry, Michelle.
No worries. I was just going to say, when I was a fundraising director, one of the priorities I always used to do was work with the board and really say, if the two things that will make me successful to really grow the income, because every charity always wants you to come in and grow their income, is we have to create a financial runway. Because if we're doing everything, and it's needed for tomorrow, we're just going to shoot ourselves in the foot. And we also have to prioritize relationships and stewardship, because the vast majority of the money that is coming into this charity, the harvest that we're getting today was not planted yesterday. It was planted years ago. And so, this is, you look at all your best donors, and they were always your long-term donors that you have a fantastic relationship with. They introduce you to other people, they sing your praises, they do. So if you think financial runway, relationships, and really nurture, because the other thing is, when I became a funder, I was stunned by how much time I spent with other funders. I spent my life with other funders. And basically, it's like word of mouth is really, really fantastic. So if you have a great relationship with your donors and you give them something to talk about, and they're spending their life with other funders, they will talk about it. And that's a great way for you to get that ripple going. And so basically is that, but what are the two things that the boards always want? Quick money and new money, which are the two opposites of what you should be focusing on. So you're absolutely right. If you can flip that and really say to your board, if you really want the harvest to be brought home, give me a financial runway. Let's really focus on relationships. Then you can start to, actually grow that income.
I love that harvest analogy. I have to drop off a little early, guys, but it's been really wonderful to be a part of this, and I will see you all Friday.
See you Friday.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily.
Bye, Emily.
Bye. Figure out how to get out of here.
Bye-bye. Oh, we boot you out.
You're never leaving.
There we go. We booted her out. And I think there's such a great place for having this be a message that's not only coming from like the insiders, but also from a mixture of practitioners, consultants, tech providers that are really aligned with this. I see a lot of opportunity. So like the Marcuses, the Kallians of the world, where, your whole philosophy is essentially aligned with this, right? It's just, you have to support this with, and Kirk is saying Hotel California. Is that the one about the hotel that you can never leave?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. But I see so much potential. I'm excited to have this conversation on Friday with more people. I mean, it's like at a very simple level, the more we can do, there's still lots of folks out there that I feel can benefit from this exposure. To me, it makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of one of those things like, why would you not, like, what are the reasons to not do it? But maybe it's because we have this fantastic group. We're almost at the top of the hour. I promised that we'd go around really quickly. And if you haven't mentioned your org and what you do at that organization, please do so. So Kalyan, please go ahead.
All right. We're truly flipping the funnel here, aren't we? Like we're doing introductions at the end.
Sorry.
No, so I'm Kalyan, co-founder and CEO at AlmaBase. What AlmaBase does is basically work with universities and high schools primarily from an alumni engagement perspective. I started this company from my own sort of experience from a lack of scholarships when I went to college. So, one thing led to another, started a nonprofit foundation, became a part-time fundraiser for a while, but eventually sort of focused on building this technology that essentially gives alumni relations professionals all the tools to be able to run all their programs, measure engagement, and truly sort of show their impact in terms of whatever the outcomes are that the advancement team is looking at. So that's broadly what we do.
So you've walked the walk. You're talking the talk and walking the walk. Thank you, Kalyan. Michelle.
My name is Michelle Benson. I founded Culture of Philanthropy, which is, I still work on the fundraising side of the funding side of the fence. So I work with corporates, major donors, their advisors and trust funds to create joint funds and giving criteria. And we actively go out and find charities to invest in. And then on the other side of the fence, I work with charities to say, how can you be found? Stop knocking on that closed door, get found. And so I do a series of online courses, coaching and consultancies to build up those fundraising strategies to make it more fun.
Wonderful. Heather.
So yeah, I think I mentioned I'm a Chief Development Officer with an organization called Norwest Cap, which provides a very robust portfolio of social services in Northwest New Jersey. I'll say quickly, it's been interesting. I've been with the organization since fall of 2020. Norwest Cap's been around since the 60s, and is over a $20 million organization at this point, but the majority of that funding has traditionally come from government, federal and state contracts. And so I really had an opportunity to come in and start building a development program from the ground up so that we could execute on some of our strategic plan and the goals that set in the strategic plan, expand who we serve, expand on some of our programs, reach more families who might not qualify because of their, the federal poverty guidelines and things for our traditional services, but still could really use that assistance. So it's been an amazing opportunity to work within an organization that Michelle had that sort of financial runway, had the stability in place to allow me to experiment with some things and test some things and try some things. And I have loved every minute of it. And we're only at the beginning, so a lot more to come.
Beautiful. Fantastic development leader. Thank you, Heather. Marcus.
Thank you for this opportunity. Again, I'm Marcus Howard. I'm the CEO of MetaArena, and we are a platform that basically turns brands of any size and in any industry into a gaming company, so they can leverage video games to authentically and digitally engage both employees and customers to drive more products or service sales.
Wonderful. And when he says customers, he also means constituents, which is our lingo.
Your donors.
Our code. Exactly. Donors, dollars, ka-ching, ka-ching. Leslie.
This has been really fun. Thanks, everybody. So I'm Leslie, and I'm at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. So our mission is to train the next public health leaders, but also to be really a voice of public health to the world. So we have lots of different public-facing things, and I work on the annual giving side, but also in alumni engagement. And really, we view as giving as one way of engaging with the school, whether those other ways include listening to our podcasts, subscribing to our newsletters, coming and getting a certificate. And I'm excited about the conference.
This is amazing. Thank you, everybody. Before we leave, we have 3 minutes. So Kalyan, India, Michelle, UK, a few US folks. I'm going to put myself in US, a little bit of Spain, vacation time. In the chat, we've had Canada, Enrique in Mexico, This is an incredible group. I'm so excited. Please join these beautiful minds and these beautiful people. We'll see you on Friday, and it's just going to be the beginning. There's a lot of opportunities to connect with each other throughout the year. So thanks, everybody. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye, everyone. See you Friday.
Bye.
Bye, guys.